The Pokémon series is back again with its newest entry, Pokémon Legends ZA. With the gameplay of the previous Pokémon Legends Arceus being one of my favorite games in the whole franchise, I was really excited to see this formula seemingly return for yet another entry. I've been a Pokémon fan for about as long as I can remember, and I've kept up with every new game release for nearly 20 years now. And from the games that stick to the series' roots to the more experimental titles, the Nintendo Switch generation has been bringing us some of the most innovative Pokémon titles that the series has ever seen. Returning to Kalos, or at least a part of it, sounded like a long-awaited dream come true. But could this be the Pokémon Z game that I had wanted all those years ago? 5 years after the events of Pokémon X and Pokémon Y, you arrive in Lumiose City. The city is currently undergoing plans for a redevelopment by a corporation known as Quizartico Inc. Their goal is to create a city where humans and Pokémon can peacefully live together. When trouble arises, it's up to you to protect Lumiose City, while at the same time you're competing in the ZA Royale to rank up from rank Z to rank A. Make it to rank A and you'll have one wish granted. There is a lot more that's going on here, so I'm keeping it pretty vague, but by the end of my adventure, I felt that this had one of the best stories of any Pokémon game out there, especially the late game and ending. Throughout your adventure, there are plenty of characters for you to meet, consisting of faces both new and familiar. At the beginning of the game, you'll meet either Urbane or Tawny, who invite you to join Team MZ, a group of young trainers tasked with protecting Lumiose City while running the Hotel Z. Other members of the team are Naveen and Lita, and the group, including the player character, seems to have a really friendly dynamic. It's not always the case in Pokemon games, but it's here that it's totally believable this is a group of friends who get along. I felt the same way about the group in Scarlet and Violet, and I absolutely enjoyed every single moment here where I got to go back to the hotel for part of the story and get to plan with the team what the next mission would be. Everybody's always kind of poking fun at each other, but you can tell that they have each other's backs. I even liked how I got to be involved in some of the banter because of the different dialogue options that may result in different outcomes or reactions from these other characters. The main group of regulars you interact with all have very unique personalities that actually made the world feel alive. Like these are actual people who are living in Lumiose City and exist beyond just the game's narrative. The game itself is set entirely within Lumiose City, a decision that may have raised some eyebrows when you consider that just about every other Pokemon game has you exploring an entire region. I think it works this time around. In Legends ZA, the city setting is more crucial than ever to the overall narrative, and because the city is undergoing a redevelopment plan, I found that there was more than enough for me to explore. Pokemon can be found in different designated wild zones which unlock as you progress through the story, as well as on top of city rooftops. There's also a fair bit of platforming to be found as you can climb some scaffolding to reach hidden items and new paths to the rooftops. It's not quite the Pokemon you could ride in the Sun and Moon games or even in Legends Arceus, but I found it pretty entertaining that you could somehow unlock new traversal abilities in a Pokemon game. Around the map, but mostly on the rooftops and scaffolding, you can find items, TMs, and special items known as colorful screws that can be exchanged for various upgrades at a certain point. It is just one city, but I honestly never grew tired of it. Sure, it took a bit for me to remember where certain biomes or the Pokemon are, and even by the end of my playthrough I hadn't quite nailed down remembering the exact street names, but I was still able to remember certain landmarks and layouts that helped me go where I wanted to go. Before the game launched, I feared everything having a similar city appearance would make it harder to discern, but because I didn't just run to the ending of the game, I spent enough time in these areas to remember where they were if I felt like I wanted to revisit. It was a really cool feeling to discover a new Pokemon or area that I hadn't yet encountered, even after 20 hours of playtime and what I thought to be extensive exploration that prolonged my actual story progression. Being able to freely throw Pokeballs without initiating a battle was one of my favorite parts of Legends Arceus, and I'm glad to see that feature return after a brief absence from Scarlet and Violet. There are 3 main ways of catching Pokemon in this game. You can either throw a Pokeball immediately, you can also battle the Pokemon to diminish its HP to have an easier chance to catch it, or you can completely KO the Pokemon this time around, which will give you a short window where the Pokemon is stunned and you can throw one ball during this time. If this ball fails, the Pokemon will despawn. I like this sort of balance of risk versus reward when it comes to completing your collection. All that being said, I don't feel the same sense of exploration and purpose behind catching Pokemon in ZA as I did in Legends Arceus. I feel that the historical setting of Legends Arceus lent itself better to giving me a reason to catching dozens of the same species. The areas in Legends ZA are much more constricted than the open world from before, and it made me feel like catching multiples of the same species was pointless, especially considering there's no incentive for mass releasing them this time around. I'd often just catch at least one of every species found in an area for my living Pokédex and simply move on. Anytime after that, I would attack with my hardest hitting move, hoping to KO them in one hit so they just wouldn't bother me while I tried to do whatever I was there for. The catch rate for many Pokemon also seems frustratingly high for some species when it feels like it really shouldn't be. Even with all the catch upgrades I could buy, I still found that Pokemon broke out of the Pokeballs way too frequently. Take a smaller Pokemon like Eevee for example. I would get the HP low enough or even KO it, toss an Ultra Ball, and it would still not catch it. For a more aggressive Pokemon or an Alpha, that seemed like it would be obvious, but I feel like a small Pokemon like Eevee shouldn't take upwards of 10 attempts for one Pokemon, and I was a high enough level too. It doesn't exactly ruin the gameplay experience, but this did lead to moments where I would just skip a Pokemon and come back to it later because it wasn't worth the frustration. Those moments felt like throwing a Pokeball would just be a waste and heavily contrast the way I felt playing Legends Arceus, where I enjoyed sneaking around to toss Pokeballs at unsuspecting Pokemon and would then release them for some items when I'm done with them. The most drastic overhaul Pokemon Legends ZA brings to the games is an all-new real-time battle system. Gone are the days of turn-based battles, and you now call out your attacks in real time, only limited by their respective cooldowns. You still have your typical type advantages and weaknesses, only now you're more involved in the battle. I actually like this change a lot, and it's the closest we've gotten to actually being involved in the battles without playing as the Pokemon directly. You actually have to position your Pokemon to hit the opponent, which means even if you execute your command on time and before the opponent, a wall or an obstacle can still negate your attack. I think this completely shakes up the Pokemon gameplay we've come to know and love for the better, while still remaining just as easy to understand. During wild and boss battles, you'll also have to be careful not to take any hits yourself as the trainer. It adds yet another layer of strategy and immersion to these battles that I absolutely adore. Take too many hits and you'll be knocked out, and I'd be lying if I said this didn't happen to me a couple of times. There's not really a specific health bar that you can see, but you can keep an eye out to the effects on the screen that let you know you've been taking too many hits. Pokemon battles have never felt so strategic. In the turn-based games, it was easy to have a strong frontman on the team, and I would rarely switch out mid-battle before fainting, even when the game provided the option. Thanks to these changes, the whole flow of the game is much faster and feels like less of a chore. I'm someone who typically tries to engage in as few battles as possible during Pokemon playthroughs, but here I found myself trying to get any advantage I could to get some quick battles. Admittedly, as a 20-year veteran to the series, I still get a little tripped up on some of the type advantages, but Legends ZA makes it easy to understand what moves will be effective and allows me to quickly change out my Pokemon on the fly. Seriously, I've never found myself swapping Pokemon during battle this often, and I've even found myself actively using moves that I typically avoid in the turn-based games, like Tail Whip or Growl in the beginning, simply because they were available to me. I didn't have to worry about it feeling like a waste of a turn where I could have done some damage because I would have to wait for my other moves to recharge anyway, which may or may not be obvious, but I'd just be spamming the respective attack buttons to try and work something in before my opponent could. When the sun goes down, the gloves come off. Certain parts of the city will become closed off and become battle zones. It's here that you try to sneak up on trainers for an advantage to challenge them in battle. This usually means you can get another move in, and a lot of times you can just KO the Pokemon before the battle even starts. While it's not always required, these battles are how you earn a challenger's ticket to rank up in the aforementioned ZA Royale. It's pretty exhilarating to make sure that you are the first person to attack and that you don't get snuck up on, and I really enjoy these nighttime battles. However, when I'm not battling, you do kinda have to sit through the whole battle zone activated cutscene and wait for that to finish as the day transitions from day to night or night to day. A complete day and night cycle usually takes about half an hour, but longer play sessions will mean that you're seeing this cutscene a lot more frequently than maybe you'd like. It's only a few seconds that slow the game down, but it can feel a little annoying. One of the main attractions to be found in Legends ZA are the Rogue Mega Evolution battles. These are very similar to the battles against the Noble Pokemon in Legends Arceus, where you, the player, must physically dodge attacks from erratic Mega Evolved Pokemon in real time. At the same time, you must command your own Pokemon to attack and collect Mega Power to Mega Evolve them yourself. Your attacks will do damage normally, but Mega Evolving your team is essentially required to have any chance in these battles. These active battles were some of my favorite moments in the previous Legends game, and I'm excited to share that they were still some of my favorite parts in Legends ZA. There's a sense of urgency here that you don't really feel in a regular Pokemon battle, and this is a true threat that needs to be stopped. These giant Pokemon hit hard. I think it's a much better evolution of the battles found in Legends Arceus because it requires you to still take type advantages into consideration, and there's more to focus on than just tossing bombs and dodge rolling. Clearing each Rogue Mega Evolution battle will reward you with that Pokemon-specific Mega Stone, which you can then use to Mega Evolve your own team. Pokemon Legends ZA doesn't introduce any new Pokemon species, and I think that's what makes this game feel a bit less exciting than other new Pokemon releases. I play these games to collect or catch 'em all, if you will. In addition to that, I like to build my teams using exclusively new Pokemon found in the game. This left me scratching my head a bit when deciding who I would add to my team, but I eventually landed on a decent lineup to carry me through to the end. I think a few new species would have helped me better feel like this is a new adventure I'm embarking on. Legends Arceus introduced a handful of Hisuian forms, but the only new inclusions here are the new Mega forms, which are great, but they don't really scratch the itch of discovering something new for me since they exist almost exclusively in battle. Executing a Mega Evolution in battles does feel smooth, however, and it's no longer limited to one species and one evolution per battle. If your meter is charged and you have the Mega Stone, you're ready to Mega Evolve. I still felt like I had to be careful in choosing who I would evolve as you don't really get more than one opportunity per battle, but it never felt like anybody on my team would have been a waste. Pokémon Legends ZA also looks pretty great on Nintendo Switch 2. I didn't play the Switch 1 version, but I really enjoyed the smooth 60 FPS experience I had on Switch 2. It almost feels unnatural to see a Pokémon game with these cutscenes running so smooth. And just to address the elephant in the room, I found that unless I was actively seeking out some of the graphical shortcomings I had seen mentioned, I didn't really notice them in my playthrough. I'm not saying it's not an issue that can't be improved upon, but I think people on the internet kind of went overboard in complaining about just how big of an issue it actually is. If this is the compromise we needed to have the smooth experience that I did, I'm totally okay with it. Anything I was actively involved with in the game actually looked great. It looks like even some of the Pokemon models have seen a small refresh compared to other entries on the Switch, and a lot of the characters I interacted with have really memorable designs. I remember seeing another criticism that you can't enter every single building that the city has to offer, and I'm really never bothered by that. There are still a substantial amount of buildings that you would actually want to go into that you can, and plenty of NPCs roaming the streets of Lumio still made the game feel alive. The soundtrack here is also one of the best soundtracks in the whole Pokemon series. It's actually pretty impressive just how many ways they've managed to transform the iconic Lumio City medley into something that doesn't ever really get annoying or repetitive. There are more upbeat renditions of the theme during the daytime, and a more relaxed mood at night. Some of the special event trainer battles are especially catchy, and they linger in my head after a while. It's actually really cool just how many pieces of music there are, because each trainer can be associated with a different theme. One criticism that I will bring up because it cannot go unnoticed is the lack of voice acting for characters in the game. This has been an ongoing issue in the series, but it's especially noticeable here. At this point, the largest media franchise in the world should have this done by now. Throw some more money into the game's budget if it means we can bring these characters to life in the main series games. It wouldn't be as noticeable if the characters weren't all animated as if you should be hearing them speak. Instead, you're stuck reading their text boxes. Again, it's not the most glaring issue, but at this point, come on. I really enjoyed my time with Pokémon Legends ZA. This is really some of the most fun that I've had with a Pokemon game before. The characters, the story, the presentation, they all come together to create a fantastic experience that felt near impossible to put down at times. It doesn't quite invoke that same sense of wonder and breadth of exploration that I enjoyed in Legends Arceus, but it's close enough that I was reminded why I love Pokemon and the Legends games in the first place. I think there's plenty here for veteran Pokemon fans and even newcomers. With a captivating narrative and extremely engaging gameplay mechanics, this is the freshest that Pokemon has felt in quite a while, and some of the most fun I've had with the series in years.